Hello, I'm Professor Tucker from St. Petersburg College, the Ethics Department. In this video, we want to look at environmental ethics. Environmental ethics uses different approaches and theories than the moral theories we looked at earlier in the course, the consequential and non-consequential theories. There are 5 distinct approaches to environmental ethics in our texts. These are anthropocentrism, naturalism, land ethic, biocentrism, and deep ecology. First, let's look at what no ethical approach might look like. If commitment is primarily to unrestrained development and industry, this falls outside of these approaches. Throughout history, there have been societies that place priority on economic and industrial development. This could be for individual, business, or nationalist interests, even at the expense of the environment. A few examples of this might include the killing of 40 million buffaloes in the United States. These were killed for hides and fertilizer to be made from bones that were shipped by rail in vast quantities. Deeply disturbing. Worldwide deforestation of rainforests is a concern, including areas of the Amazon, Africa, and Southeast Asia. Much of this is driven by palm oil plantations. The Three Gorges Dam on the Yangtze River is the largest ever human engineering project visible from space. The dam controls flooding, which has plagued the region for centuries, and also produces electric power equal to several large coal-fired plants that would burn annually 50 million tons of coal. Yet building the dam involved flooding of 13 cities and thousands of villages, and driving organisms to extinction. The most notable was the final extinction of a genus of river dolphins, the baiji. And yet last year, China built the equivalent of 2 coal-fired power plants per week, while dramatically increasing its importation of coal and oil from Russia. Certainly consumerism encourages environmental damage. Others blame capitalism, but the economic system does not appear to be the key to unbridled development at the expense of the environment. Non-capitalist societies like China can exploit the environment for industrial development as well. Rather, we should look at the approaches to environmental ethics from the text. The first theory in the textbook would be the anthropocentrism, literally human-centered. According to this approach, we should take care of the environment for the sake of humans and human flourishing. The environment exists in order to serve humans. It can be used, though not exploited. We depend on the natural environment entirely for, obviously, food. But so many of our medicines are made from plant or animal chemicals. If we lose thousands of species to extinction, should we wonder how many chemical compounds have been lost that could have been beneficial for people? Poison in the environment poisons us. Genetic modification brings many concerns. What will be the long-term consequences? Do financial or personal motivations distract us from concerns about long-term consequences? Do we have sufficient safeguards? With genetic modifications, we can produce new forms of food. We can also produce animals that create chemicals in their bodily fluids, or plants that are modified to produce pharmaceuticals. Animals can be genetically modified such that they can grow human organs, notably the growing of an ear on the back of a mouse. The modification makes the graft less likely to be rejected by human patients. With the emergence of artificial intelligence, we will see an explosion of possibilities for genetic modification. Electrodes in the nervous systems of organisms can turn them into robots. There is here a great potential for human benefit, but what if we go too far? Do we know when we have gone too far? As an unsettling possibility, after years of COVID, several government agencies now, not all, have concluded that COVID probably was grown in and escaped from a laboratory in China. We also find out that the laboratory in Wuhan received funds from United States taxpayers through the National Institute of Health. Should we be concerned? Most of us have watched Jurassic Park and so many other horror movies. The best argument to use with aggressive industrialism or with anthropocentrism is the argument of sustainability. If we continue our current activity, will we diminish our future capacity? For industrialism, the question is whether the destruction of the environment will limit future development and exploitation. For anthropocentrism, it's more if our current patterns can sustain human flourishing long term. Naturalism, our next approach, holds that nature has intrinsic worth, value in itself, whether or not it serves humanity. As important as this idea is, it cannot be argued convincingly through science or reason. Science cannot prove the value or worth of anything. As a matter of fact, there's no evidence that nature thinks nature is important. Nature in itself has no values. Yet human beings, not all, have a sense that being in nature is an almost spiritual experience. There's something transcendent, a value beyond the service of human needs, something intrinsically beautiful and worthy. Psychology suggests that being in nature often makes us feel small in a good way, and to feel a part of a whole that is greater than us. The experience is sometimes referred to as awe, which is usually a religious feeling. Psychological benefits include well-being, diminished selfishness, and pro-social behaviors which contribute to human flourishing. In studies, nature or animals promote the alleviation of depression, rehabilitation of convicted felons, or the redirection of wayward juveniles. I spent a summer studying about 45 minutes from Yosemite National Park. Weekends were an opportunity to escape to the mountains, backpacking. One enters only with what one has on his or her person, leaving behind the roads and the cell phone reception. My first experience, I was not prepared. Neither the tent nor the sleeping bag was sufficient for the cold, which awakened me early in the morning. I emerged to see a gorgeous landscape covered in ice, and the glow of the early morning. I snapped through 3 rolls of film. That was back in the day of film. And surprised myself sitting on a rock, not knowing how I got there, and heard myself laughing out loud. The pictures on the PowerPoint were a part of that experience. In naturalism, nature has a value of its own. One finds this perspective in many Native American tribes. A hunter might kill a deer and say a prayer over the deer, thanking it for the gift of its life before using it for sustenance. The idea of naturalism is you can use it, but it does not belong to you. We find this also in the origins of kosher foods in Judaism. One looks at the Tanakh, or what Christians call the Old Testament, and finds the reason one cannot eat the blood of an animal. One finds phrases such as, you can eat the meat, but you must pour the blood out onto the ground. You cannot eat the blood. Why not the blood? Because the blood symbolizes the life. Meat, yes, but the life does not belong to you. In naturalistic ethics, human beings are the most powerful and intelligent beings, and have therefore a corresponding responsibility to be stewards, to manage and cause to flourish, to protect and develop nature. This approach largely coincides with the idea of animal welfare. We will look at humans, animals, and the land ethic and biocentrism largely together. In humans, animals, land ethic, the emphasis is on the ecosystems as a whole and balancing these 3 points of a triangle. A unique aspect of this approach is the affirmation that non-living nature also has intrinsic worth. When one considers the beauty of the moon, the stars, mountains, streams, ice, some would argue that all of these have intrinsic value. Biocentrism brings up an important point often missed by other theories, that most biological organisms do not have developed neural systems. They don't have brains or intelligence. Often we look at the great apes and exclaim, wow, they are so human-like. But what about the grass? What about microbes, flowers? Are they still valuable? Biocentrism focuses on valuing of all biological life and not valuing organisms based only on the development of their neurological systems. These approaches largely parallel the idea of animal rights. Deep ecology suggests that there is an essential oneness or wholeness of all nature, of which human beings are just a part. Many people experience a deep desire to feel a oneness with nature, with other beings, to not be separate individuals. There's a strange tension in humans between the inclination of individualism and looking out for our own personal welfare first, and longing to be a part of a bigger whole. How can we describe this? It's very much closer to a religious belief system than a rational idea. That does not make it more right or more wrong. However, it's better that we understand it for what it is, an intuitive, often deeply held belief system. This concept is somewhat conveyed in a few of our favorite movies. One thinks of Disney's Pocahontas and oneness with nature. The real historical Pocahontas would not have agreed, but it is still an attractive vision. One looks at The Lion King and The Circle of Life. Avatar was hugely successful as a popular film. Who is not drawn to the idea of connecting directly to a dragon and flying in a symbiosis, where all of life joins together in a unifying system of trees? For deep ecology, even pets are frowned upon. We have bred dogs to be docile, loyal to humans, to serve our needs. They have become very different from the wolf originals. Do we have a right to do with other autonomous organisms? Maybe rather than breeding dogs to be human companions, we should have let them be what they originally were. Maybe we should allow nature to be true to itself, uninhibited by human power to craft environments. Very important changes would have to take place. The population of the world would need to be radically reduced. Commercialization and technological development would be curtailed. As we pursue a life of simplicity with a small footprint, we would allow nature to run its course without human intervention. As humans, we would submit to the cycle of life. Deep ecology would align with animal rights and sometimes animal liberation. There have been instances of eco-terrorism or the use of violence to free animals from human domination and exploitation. Well, that's enough for now. Next video, we want to look at some contemporary concerns for ecology. Thank you for joining me.